Good morning. And welcome, whoever and wherever you are, to worship with us at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Ventura. I am Worship Associate Celia Ortenberg, and I'm joined this morning by Worship Associate Zena Kingshill, woohoo, our minister, the Reverend Dana Warsnop, is out of the pulpit this Sunday. Our service today, though, is a grand collaboration as we reflect on tomorrow's holiday, Labor Day, and think about our early jobs in the workforce and whether and how they influenced our future careers. We have 3 speakers from this congregation who will share their stories. My first job was as a waitress in a coffee shop where I earned $1.35 an hour, which was legally less than minimum wage, and the tips were about 10% on the average. In that job, I learned how to work hard, to move fast, and to appreciate all of the hardworking people who found respite in our coffee counter after a long day's hard work. It was a great first job for me. I welcome everyone here in the sanctuary and all of those tuning in through the wonders of technology, and we thank everyone sitting in this section of seats nearest the windows for wearing masks. Announcements. You may have noticed that the fence has been erected along the side of the property, which helps define the public walkway and deters vandals from destroying the church property. All of this was accomplished by your combined contribution of $10,000. We thank you all so much, and a special thank you for Yukio Kano, David Hinkle, Brian Buck, Mike Sixby, and Tony Porter. Yay. And Michael Axevan. That's right. This came from Michael Axevan. Thank you, Jim. And we are still collecting auction items for this year's auction. Right now we have 65 items or so, mostly arts and crafts items and physical items. We're still looking for more social and food events, family-friendly items, and fixed price events. We would like to get at least 150 items for this year. We had 169 last year. The last day to submit your item is September 17th. So I need to go home this week and write up those items, which I have not done yet. Getting a thumbs up from Ruth over there. So please don't keep your auction team in suspense and submit your items as soon as possible. You just need to look for the ladies that are wearing the feathered masks in Berg Hall. So if you want to do that, that'd be great. There's also limited time or limited availability for our cluster camp outing at Camp de Benneville from September 29th to October 1st, where we will gather in the mountains with members of our neighbor congregations. You can ask Jim, Kitty, Brian, or Reverend Dana for more information, or Google Camp de Benneville Pines, and they will give you all of the information that you need. If you missed any of these or you want to know more, let me remind you to refer to the announcements in the weekly message UUVC this week for current announcements. Now, bring what is yours, a burdened heart, a joyous song, A wearied spirit, a seeking mind, bring the gift of yourself to the altar. It is an honorable gift. Let us enter sacred space.
I am Worship Associate Zena Kingshill. I'm wishing you all a beautiful Sunday. It's great to see so many of you here on this Labor Day Sunday, and I hope that there are a lot of you up there on Zoom and YouTube watching from home. We love having everybody here, and we welcome our newcomers also. Because it's Labor Day and we're talking about jobs, I will also tell you about my first job. It launched my career serendipitously. I interviewed with this was right after college, and I went and interviewed with a large mutual fund company here in Los Angeles. And I was offered 3 jobs there, and I got to pick. So I picked the most interesting sounding one, of course, which was in the retirement plan servicing department. Little did I know then that I would end up owning a small business as a pension consultant. And now we invite those who are Zooming or streaming into this service to light a chalice or candle at home as Celia lights the chalice of our free faith here in the Our chalice lighting words today are by Florence Kaplow. In recognition of Labor Day, we light this flame to honor all work, including the work of our hands and our backs, in gratitude for all the labors that support our world, and for all those who boldly continue the work of justice, equity, and peace. A reading by Dorothy Day, adapted. People say, "What is the sense of our small effort?" They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do. Come, let us worship together.
Oh, boy.
Good morning. I'm Carol Bierke, the music director, and I want to welcome you all here in the sanctuary and online. Our opening hymn is Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, and I invite you all to rise in body or spirit and join me in song. Open your ears to the song.
I'm going to invite all the children who want to come up, all the children and those that are young at heart. Please join us up here in front. And before I tell the story, I was asked to share my first job. You know, as a teenager, I babysat, I worked in restaurants, and I did a lot of odd jobs like that to make a little bit of money. But after I graduated from college, growing up in Ohio, I moved to New York, and my first real job, full-time job, was working for the American Stock Exchange. And it was so exciting, it was so different from everything that I had imagined. Fury, I got to see the people down on the stock, trading stocks. It only lasted for 3 months because as a newcomer, I think that I had a lot to learn, so I was let go. But it was the start of something very exciting and wonderful for me. I learned that making relationships is really important. And speaking of relationships, oh, that's beautiful. I want to tell you a story about a good friend of mine. And I think that many of you also know this good friend, because my story is about how Santa got his job. He wasn't always Santa, but how Santa got his job, written by Stephen Krensky and illustrated by J.D. Schindler. When Santa Claus was a young man, he went out looking for a job. Okay? Santa wanted no part of desks or offices. His first job was cleaning chimneys. Santa was sure-footed on even the steepest roofs, and he loved twisting around tight spaces. But there was a problem. Santa was so neat that he never got covered in soot or made a mess in the fireplace. So nobody ever believed him when he said he was done. He didn't stay long. His next job, Santa worked for the post office, where everyone could see that he was doing his job. Santa's favorite part of the job was bringing packages to people all over town. However, waiting in traffic was frustrating and a waste of his time. To speed things up, he started making deliveries in the middle of the night. But there was a problem. No one was glad to see him at that hour. The postmaster got so many complaining letters that Santa had to leave. Santa then found a job at the zoo. He was very organized about animals, and he knew when they were sleeping and when they were awake. And he knew when they were behaving themselves or not. But there was a problem. Santa became close friends with all of the reindeer, and the other animals got jealous. Sadly, the zookeeper had to let him go, and Santa was starting to get discouraged. But his friends, the reindeer, worked very hard to cheer him up. Together, they left and they joined the circus. Soon, the reindeer were shooting Santa out of the cannon 3 times a night. Santa so loved flying through the air and wearing his new red costume. He was a big success. But there was a problem. The ringmaster wanted to build up the suspense, and he wanted the crowd to worry and be scared about Santa's well-being. But Santa was having so much fun for that. Ho, 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 he always cried as he flew through the air. So the crowd wasn't worried about him at all. The angry ringmaster soon fired Santa and the reindeer, and as they gathered their things, some elves came looking for their autographs. And when they heard the news, they invited Santa and the reindeer home for supper. Well, the elves lived way out of town. They were toy makers, and their house was their workshop. And Santa was amazed. "Children must love these toys," he said. but the elves looked a little embarrassed because they only made toys for their own pleasure. Selling them was just too much problems, it was too much trouble. And then Santa said, "What if you give them away?" And the elves hadn't thought about that before. Santa said, "I could deliver them for you." There were enough toys here for children all over the world. And the elves smiled, and they hired him right on the spot. The elves made Santa a special sack that was always big enough no matter how many toys were put in there. And they built him a sleigh. The polar bears offered to pull it. They were very strong, and they whipped Santa across the snow. But there was a problem. Yeah, they were in the water, right? So it was the biggest problem yet. But to Santa's surprise, the problem could be solved. Santa and the reindeer practiced together every day. They made a few mistakes at first, but soon they learned to work together as a team. And in the darkest part of winter, when parents needed their spirits lifted the most, Santa and his reindeer tried it out. They took off, and that first night that they were out, it was a little hard because Santa was still learning about shortcuts and about the high winds, but at last,
Might
they all
still
got
get
the
it.
hang of it. And ever
This
since
is for the
then,
kids, so
the
it comes
elves
after
have been
that.
making toys all year long, and Santa has given them away all in one night. He loves his job as much as ever, and he's gotten pretty good at it over the years, hasn't he? Yeah, look, and he even wrapped around the moon. They're still messing things up a little bit.
You need
So,
more.
even though it's early for Christmas, it's not early to know about what our friend Santa and the elves are doing now. Hard at work. And now, if you would, let's rise in the middle aisle here and make a bridge of love so that we could sing our children out.
Okay. It's used.
We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the
No.
spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go.
That was a great story. So much fun. Each Sunday, this
Here it is.
congregation gives away our collection to an organization in the larger community or to funds to help people in our own church. Those at home have two ways to give: through the link that's posted on the chat or by texting from the number on your screen. Folks who are present in the sanctuary can text to give, or you can still write a check or give cash if you wish and drop it in the basket at the rear of the sanctuary after the service. Our offering today goes to Ventura Homeless Prevention, to keep our Ventura neighbors who have fallen on hard times from being evicted from their homes and perhaps forced into homelessness, as a full 50% of those who are evicted do end up in homelessness. Ventura Homeless Prevention has helped over 2,000 people since its beginnings in 2007 by paying or helping to pay 1 month's rent. When doing so, will keep people in their homes. It costs an average of just $1,150 per household or $500 per person, and it works. Over 90% of those receiving rental assistance from Ventura Homeless Prevention are still in their homes 1 year later. I think that's a wonderful record. Just last month, Ventura Homeless Prevention was able to help 10 households consisting of 15 adults and 8 children. Among them were people who lost a job or work hours, an Uber driver who had to replace his failing auto, and the saddest of all, a woman whose diagnosis with pancreatic cancer resulted in the inability to pay rent in August. Thanks to offering like this one today, Ventura Homeless Prevention was able to help in each case and paid the rent that kept each family in their homes. Every penny donated goes directly to pay rent and keeps people housed. Thanks for giving generously, as you always do.
Other eternal. There. Boom. Boom in. Nice shot. Sounds like my mom playing.
We are so grateful for the generosity of this congregation, which helps us weave a tapestry of love that we call community.
Good morning. I'm Martha Caslow, and I joined this church back in October.
This is all about
because I
elders
just
and
moved to the
what they
area,
learned
and I'm
from
thrilled to
jobs
be
as
here.
kids.
And I'm looking forward to meeting those of you I haven't met yet. And so today I'm talking about my jobs and what I learned. In 1967, I graduated from the University of Maryland with a bachelor's degree in psychology. And I thought for sure I was going to medical school. Well, it didn't turn out that way. I could only make it to the waiting list. So then I thought, oh, I need a job because what am I going to do? I'll teach biology or I'll teach zoology. So I went down to the Board of Education and they just said, oh no, you're not going to teach. You don't have student teaching experience. So it was like, uh-oh. what does one do? So my past jobs had been dry cleaning collector and camp counselor and swimming instructor, and that's what I knew how to do. So on my way home, I stopped at the Girl Scout office just to say hello and see if they had any ideas. And sure enough, they did. They hired me. They hired me as what they called a field advisor at $6,000 a year. I was ecstatic. That was just wonderful. And my job was going to be to recruit and train people for their camping program. And the camping program is they owned 4 camps, and they were spread across 4 states. And my job was to recruit and train people to run the camping program. And I did that for 3 years and loved it. I loved that job. I loved particularly being a camp director. That was just my cup of tea. And I think my proudest moment there was forming a Girl Scout troop for people who were developmentally disabled and had a special training school. And I loved forming that troop and having those girls come to camp. I think we all loved it and learned a lot from that. So I decided I would go to graduate school. I needed some more training. And I went to graduate school, stopped my job, and I arrived, and they said, "Oh my goodness, there's been a mistake. You can't possibly go to graduate school. You don't even have the credentials to get in." And I was shocked. But then this man standing beside me said, "Well, I have room in the counseling program." So he took me in there, and that's how I came here today to you as a counseling psychologist after 30 years at Cal State University, San Bernardino. And what I learned from all of this is I make lots of plans, and I'm not in charge. And that's been true all of my life. I make the plans of what I'm going to do, and something else happens, and it's always worked out well for me. And I'm delighted to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Martha. Now is the time in the service when we hold up the great joys and sorrows that grace our lives. Sometimes our work gives us joy, and other times it gives us sorrow. Our presence in the workplace is or was like placing stones in the water. The ripples made or felt throughout our community, and we place stones in the water for both the joys and the celebrations and the sorrows in our hearts. You can submit a joy or sorrow for sharing via the link on the website, uuventura.org, or a link on the Thursday email bulletin, UUVC this week. Those received by 8 o'clock on Saturday night will be shared that Sunday. But today we begin our joys and sorrows by lighting a memorial candle for our dear, dear member of our congregation, Dwayne Wilcomb, who died peacefully Wednesday morning. His wife, Sylvia, was by his side. Dwayne was a member of this congregation for almost 30 years, and a better man than Dwayne is hard to find. Always there with a hug, a smile, and a kind word, he gave so much of himself to others. And Dwayne loved to live his life. At 92, Dwayne could be found on a Saturday night at the Olivas Adobe dancing under the stars with his beautiful Sylvia. What an example of how to live fully. Our hearts go out to Sylvia and Dwayne's family. A memorial service will be held here in the sanctuary on October 14th at noon. In honor and remembrance of Dwayne, today we light a memorial candle from the chalice flame, and we extinguish the chalice for some moments of silence reflection. The chalice flame will then be relit, and both will be extinguished at the end of our service.
I invite you now to speak into the gathered community or write into the chat the names of those you wish to celebrate or memorialize, or those in need of the loving embrace of this beloved community. Please feel free to continue to add to the chat even after the silent pause has ended. Celia will now place one final stone in the water for all the joys and sorrows yet unspoken in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. May we truly be grateful for all that is our life.
Please remain seated as we sing our meditative hymn. It is called Grieve Not Your Heart, and it probably isn't familiar. So I'm going to sing it one time through, and then everyone can join in with me. Grieve not your heart for want of place, nor yearn for easy praise, but fit yourself some task to do, and well employ your days. Grieve not your heart for want of place, nor yearn for easy praise, but fit yourself some task to do, and well
morning, friends. Ms. Sylvia. It's joys and sorrows. Truly grateful for that. So, my name is Don Henniger. I'm a 5-year member of this church. Currently serve on the board of directors, and come January, I'll be facilitating our covenant groups. I'm hoping you stay tuned for more information on that. I retired from work in 2017 after a 40-year career working with children and families. I ended my employment as the CEO of a private early care and education nonprofit. I had responsibility for 1,000 contracted workers, 400 employees, including 250 teachers, a $60 million annual budget, and we served over 5,000 children and families. I want to talk about my first job, my first social service job. In 1975, I left men's clothing at May Company, saying goodbye to retail eagerly to begin more meaningful work. I had a toddler to care for, a slight 2 years college under my belt, no real training, but I did have a workshop in behavior modification techniques that I used in order to potty train my daughter. At this time, it should be noted that mental health services were in great transition. The state was closing all of our state hospitals, and services were to be embedded in the local community. Psychotropic drugs became mainstream, and patients were controlled. Patients also at this time gained the right to refuse treatment. Major changes in how we deliver services. Now, some of you who are my age may remember a film, 1948, Olivia de Havilland, The Snake Pit. This was a mental health situation gone bad, and that pretty much describes my first job in social services. I did take a pay cut from selling men's clothing because it's, of course, worth less to care for children. I was hired as a counselor for 8 teenage boys in a 100-bed residential care facility. My job with the boys was to provide care from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight. The school's population was kids 8 to 18 years old, co-ed, wards of the court, most have been abused, some with cognitive disabilities, some juvenile offenders. This was a last chance placement for these runaway kids, many of who were gay and been kicked out of many other facilities. All these populations were mixed together. That is illegal today. This was the worst job of my life. There was horrible, illegal, abusive treatment of these children by policy. I participated in this nightmare shamefully for 2 years. Children were regularly assaulted by each other and by staff. Staff were regularly assaulted by students. There was a rape, a death of an unmonitored child. There was a boy who self-mutilated by castration. All the girls, including the 8-year-olds, were all given birth control. Administrative policy at the school was to clear all the kids out at holidays. Take a kid home. Any overtime holiday pay. That policy ended when the social service director was arrested for repeat molestation. Staff support was limited. My supervisor handed out joints to each of his staff when we arrived. My favorite student was a gay boy, Adrian, who's 16, sweet, gentle kid who was brain damaged due to being kicked in the head by a cow. His parents had abandoned him when he was found being sexual with a cousin, and he was made a ward of the court. One night, he was assaulted and forced by bigger boys into intimacy with a, quote, willing, unquote, girl. That evening, he had a violent psychotic break attacking me, and I was, of course, the only staff in the building. It resulted in minor injuries for us both, mostly to my heart. He was left unconscious from the Thorazine, an antipsychotic drug that he was made to ingest. I wrote extensive reports about this incident, requested help for an intervention. None came, no consequences for the boys who had attacked Adrian, no care for the girl. I was never interviewed. That's when I quit. My learnings were immense. I learned that kids have no rights, that helping professionals weren't. Motivated by outrage, I knew kids deserved better and I must help. Went back to school, earning a degree in social work and eventually a master's. I had several successful internships before starting my human services employment for good. I spent 20 years working with abused and neglected children through intervention and treatment. And during that time, I learned the best way to help a child is to help a parent and prevent abuse from happening. At some point, I moved on to early care and education, believing really in the focus of prevention and what can be achieved with preschool. I did that for 20 years. I found that work isn't about where you start, nor about where you finish, but the journey in between and the children who benefit along your way. Thank you. Happy Labor Day.
We offer to you a reading in two voices. It is adapted from Amanda Udis Kessler's work entitled We Labor in Love.
On Labor Day, we honor our work, physical and mental, paid and unpaid, joyous and heartbreaking. We give thanks for work's gifts, suffer its difficulties, and strive to make labor just and joyous for all.
Our work can build our society, provide for our material needs, and give our life meaning. We labor in gratitude.
Our work can heal the world, help us understand who we are, and keep us safe. We labor in joy.
Our work can fill our days with accomplishments and our lives with stories. We labor in love.
This Labor Day and all Labor Days to come, may our work and all work serve humanity and all living beings. I invite us now to close our eyes and get comfortable in our seats as we move into a time of silent reflection and contemplation. As we breathe a few nice deep breaths together, we quiet our minds. We let go of the concerns of the day and the week behind us and the week ahead of us. We simply follow the empty breath. I invite you to consider as you breathe the work that brought you here. What has it taught you? How has it guided you? Has it helped you to discover a life that holds meaning? Where might it take you from here? Breathe in, breathe out.
So my first job was when I was 15 years old, and I lived in a tiny town in Minnesota, and it was working at a Chinese restaurant. So it was a complete cultural awakening for me because the cooks and the staff were from China. They spoke very little to no English, and I loved it because when the restaurant closed that night, they would make real Chinese food. Yeah, big whole fish and just, things that they love to eat. So it was a cool experience. And the things I got out of it were that I appreciated there was a direct response to what I put in is what I got back with my customers. And I think it has kind of connected with my ministry in that each table is a new set of people. They're hungry, impatient, warm, kind, and so it's like really takes listening to each table and responding to them. And I think that that's a thing that I really like to do, and I like to make people happy. So that was my first job. Something is stirring, shifting ground, it's just begun. Edges are blurring all around, and yesterday is done. Feel the flow, hear what's happening, we're what's happening. Don't you know, we're the movers and we're the shapers, we're the names in tomorrow's papers, ups to us, pal, to show 'em. It's our time, breathe it in, worlds to change and worlds to win. Our turn coming through, me and you, pal, me and you. Feel how it quivers on the brink. Everything gives you the shivers, makes you think there's so much stuff to sing. And you and me will be singing it like the birds, me with music and you with words. Tell them things they don't know. Up to us, pal, to show 'em. It's our time, breathe it in, worlds to change and worlds to win. Our turn coming through, me and you, pal, me and you. Years from now, we'll remember and we'll come back by the rooftop and hang a plaque. This is where it began, being what we can. It's our hands on the block, give us room and start the clock. Our dreams
Wow, there is so much love in this room. It's amazing. And I have practiced this a million times, and we'll see if it goes the way that I intend. Good morning. I am Amy Dubzinski. I've met some of you in Zoom and some in person. While I joined this congregation during the early part of the pandemic, I still consider myself a UU newbie. Most Sundays I can be found back in the tech room or occasionally working as a greeter. And I just am so humbled and honored that Xenia asked me to speak this morning. I'm gonna move this to this side, actually. Okay. Fresh out of college, I worked with a nonprofit agency in Denver, Colorado to support adults with developmental disabilities. It was my job at age 22 to teach them how to grocery shop, cook, do laundry, and all of the basic household skills. Looking back 20 plus years, the irony of this job isn't lost on me, that I was also teaching myself how to do all of those skills as a newlywed living away from family and friends. This job brought me a lot of joy, but with it also a lot of stress because I cared so deeply. I hadn't yet learned about work-life balance, and I poured my whole self into this job and worked around the clock. I wanted to help these individuals ranging from their early 20s to mid-40s to live independently on their own or in one of our group homes. After some restructuring in our agency, I was promoted to manager, which meant more paperwork and less involvement in direct service hours of these awesome human beings. It made me so happy to review case notes coming in that Cameron was remembering to take his medicine on time, Amanda completing her laundry, Scott getting to work on time via public transit, as well as some of the laughs shared with Mike about how, at the time, Amy doesn't eat meat, and yet I was the one teaching him how to make beef stroganoff. In this job, I learned how to be patient, flexible, and empathetic. I still carry a piece of them in my heart today. Fast forward 22 years to present day, and this quote with Maya Angelou resonates with me. Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. I now know so much more as a wife and a mother and an experienced teacher than I did as a young 20-something. The life and experience and practical wisdom I have now would have helped me so much more in helping to support those clients. Something, though, that's still the same is my enthusiasm for learning and passion for helping others. Now, I am a special education teacher in a kindergarten co-taught classroom with 2 teachers. Our focus is inclusion with general education peers. Special education is a service, not a place. I felt very fortunate last year to be asked to teach in our very first co-taught classroom within my district. This year, I've moved up to kindergarten to help continue building this program. Having 2 teachers helps meet the diverse learning needs within our classroom. We teach social emotional learning skills as well as all of the academic ones. When big emotions arise, it's my duty to co-regulate with them, help them problem solve, choose a calming strategy, and to model interactions with their peers. Our goal is to help these youngest learners develop autonomy, responsibility, and compassion toward others. These young scholars are developing empathy and building a strong academic foundation for life. While working in the classroom, I think about how I continue to evolve as an educator. Know better, do better. Know better, do better. These children, they deserve it. We are planting the seeds for a brighter tomorrow and have future teachers, artists, engineers, and professionals all in our room. Taking the time when children are young to build relationships with others and model empathy, it helps them grow into more well-adjusted adults. These are lessons I certainly wished I had more of when I was younger. I am really blessed to have had this career change. Teaching is my vocation, and in working with these young scholars, I'm feeling very, very hopeful. I leave you with this quote, and it is my own. May we all live each day with the confidence and the joy of a kindergartner. Thank you for listening.
Closing hymn, Building a New Way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hating, greed, and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Filled with love that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Please join me in reading the words on the screen as we prepare to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment, those we carry into our lives until we are together again. A few quick reminders before the benediction. Everyone is invited into the hall afterwards, especially our visitors, and some of you have maybe been coming more recently. And everybody's encouraged to please go talk to someone they don't already know. And those of you on Zoom, I hope you'll stick around, join a chat room, maybe talk about your first jobs and what they taught you. And be patient. It takes a little while for our wonderful tech folks to get all of you into one chat room if there aren't enough of you from multiple chat rooms. So please join a chat room. I love that part of when we met during the pandemic.
I leave you with these words adapted from W.E.B. Du Bois. Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greater usefulness of tomorrow. And I encourage all of you to do this with the joy and the confidence of a kindergartner. May it be so. Thank you.